What makes the achievement of emotional sobriety so difficult is the habits we have, the patterns we have in our behavior, the habitual ways that we've come to think about things. We have to really become aware of those things in order to challenge them, because the consciousness that has created a lot of the problems in our life cannot solve it, cannot change things. So what happens is the first step is waking up.
Well, for the last about 40 weeks or so, we have been exploring how the 12 steps help us achieve emotional sobriety. Bill Wilson was very explicit in this when he said in discussing step 12 and the 12 and 12, that if we practice these principles in our daily affairs, that we and those about us begin to achieve emotional sobriety. So once we've achieved physical sobriety, the real goal of working the steps is to create emotional sobriety. Well, the last 40 weeks, we have been on the mission of trying to unpack and understand how the steps help us achieve emotional sobriety. And once we talked about step 6 and 7, we saw that that was the pivot point, right? Where now we are pivoting in our lives from looking at what the problem has been with us, how our emotional dependence has had a very, very powerful defining impact on our life and how we are. And that's created so much of our reactivity and difficulty in terms of being able to cope with life as it is. Because when I have an expectation how it's supposed to be, I get hung up on that expectation. And when things don't happen the way I think they're supposed to be, I object to it. I try to manipulate things. I try to get it my way, all that other stuff. And all of that energy has gone towards manipulation instead of coping. So I never grow up. You know, all of my development is around how to manipulate this situation so it can be what I want it to be. And my ability to manipulate can either be from the top dog position or the underdog position. More on that later. We'll talk about how we manipulate from those positions. But where we're at now is we looked at if step 6 and 7 are telling us that now this is about developing the best possible attitude towards life. It's really interesting that the first instruction we get is to make a list of people we've harmed and become willing to make amends to them. That's because now we're taking what we've learned about ourselves and we're now applying it in a practical way to learning how to show up in our relationships. And as I mentioned last time, what we're doing is learning to take a look at ourselves and take responsibility, radical responsibility for what we're doing that's creating the problem that we're experiencing. Now, we're now looking at step 9 is making amends to people, except when to do so would injure them or possible. And so this is where now I take responsibility for myself and I try to now amend what I've done that's been harmful. We've talked a lot about what's harmful and stuff, but I want to talk about what I consider some of the benefits. What happens to us as we start to make amends and we go through this process? And the first thing we're learning, which is so important in terms of achieving emotional sobriety, is increasing our awareness of just not having my awareness either focus on you or focus on me or focus on my fantasy about what's going to happen, but for my awareness to include my awareness of what's going on with me, what I'm experiencing, but also an awareness of what you're experiencing. So what we are learning in this step, and in terms of developing the best possible attitude that we can have in life, is that it is very important for me to stay in close contact with my experience. Well, let's understand what that means for a minute. Staying in close contact with my experience means being open to what I'm feeling, and also being open to what you're feeling and what you're experiencing. Now, if I have not looked at my unenforceable rules, then parts of my experiences will be okay and other parts of my experiences won't. That's the undifferentiated or emotionally immature posture. Once I start to grow along these lines, is the rules I have that say whatever we're experiencing is what we're experiencing. And now my job is to be present to that and see what it means for both of us. So now I let go of rules about how things are supposed to be, and I start showing up to how things are. I'll say that again. I let go of the rules that tell me how things are supposed to be, how you're supposed to be, how I'm supposed to be, how life is supposed to be. And I start showing up and dealing with how things are. Well, that's a very, very different posture that I'm taking in my life. I am letting go of control. Now, you got to hear that this step 8 and 9 is about the therapeutic benefit of it is learning to let go of controlling things. When I go to make amends, I'm making amends because I need to make amends, not because I'm trying to manipulate you and get you to do what I want you to do. I'm letting go of that. I'm letting you have your experience and I'm focused on having mine. And I still can have empathy for your experience. And if you're not interested in forgiving me, you don't have to. I don't have that rule anymore. I can let go of that. But before, my undifferentiated say, well, all right, if let's say I'm having a fight with Carol, right? We're in a relationship and we start arguing and I can really see that I was really, cruel to her in some way. And I say, God, Carol, I'm so sorry. I was so cruel to you. That was really, I don't feel good about, calling you names. And then I pause and say, all right, Carol, what do you have to say you're sorry for? It becomes a tit for tat deal. No, I wasn't making amends because I really wanted to make amends. I was making amends to get Carol to make amends. I was manipulating her. So if we have that tit for tat mentality, it shows us that that's our emotional dependency. I'll do this if you do that. I'll show you mine if you show me yours. Well, that's nonsense. That's not growing up. That's not standing on our own 2 feet. That's not taking responsibility for ourselves. That's manipulating someone else. If I make amends to you, or if I say I'm sorry, you don't have to say you're sorry. You can say whatever you want. You can say I'm an idiot. You can call me names. You can do whatever you need to do to deal with your feelings. I'm dealing with mine. And if I let go of the rules about how you're supposed to be because of how I was, then whatever happens, happens. And it's okay. I can be present for you and wherever you're coming from, and I can be okay. I might be sad. It's okay for me to be sad about it. I might, like it to be different, but if I'm doing that, I'm probably still hung up with an expectation about how things are supposed to be. So this becomes a very important part of our experience, staying closely connected to our experience and paying attention to when these unenforceable rules start to show up and start to define or demand that things have to be a certain way. So a big part of my job is I'm doing this process and I'm going to do this is paying attention to these unenforceable rules if they start to show up. And maybe my amends has to be at the times, oh shit, there's one of my unenforceable rules that I'm putting on you. Let me tell you, I'm sorry for that right now, because that's not fair to you. That's not fair to me. That's interfering with the experience we're going to have. So let me clean that up before we go forward. Sometimes that will need to be included in making our amends. once I become aware of that. So we'll be unpacking these things as we go along the next few weeks, as we continue to explore some of the benefits, the hidden rewards of making amends. So I will now turn to my colleagues and invite them to join me here in the spotlight, Roger and Tom. And
I'll go ahead, Tom.
Okay, go.
All right. So a couple of things, Alan, that I just want to expand on. You're talking about steps 8 and 9 involves still, as we've talked about the last couple of weeks, especially continue to look primarily at ourselves, even as we are more inclusive of others and are geared toward the harm that we've done to others. But it still centers on expanding our awareness, like you just said. I can't confront some of my rules that I'm unaware of. I can't confront my demands that I'm unaware of. So it still keeps coming back to that over and over again. I can't hear what other people have to share with me about the harm I have done to them. If I'm so self-protective, so defended against my own feelings, if my ego is so strong that I can't tolerate, or at least that's my what I imagine, I can't tolerate the pain or the embarrassment that it will cause me if I let that information in. If, on the other hand, I know I have a certain tendency to get defensive, or I know I have a certain tendency to pull away if my feelings get hurt, then I can bring that into the conversation. Then it doesn't need to be an obstacle to make an amends or to hearing what the other person has to say or any of that anymore. So I just want to punctuate that point. All of this is still predicated on me continuing to be open to what my experience, including my, character defaults, my ego, my defensiveness, my self-protectiveness, to be open to what my life experience is trying to help me see. Alan, you talk a lot about this, that the trouble doesn't show up in our lives because we're bad people. Trouble shows up in our lives because it's just trying to point a way to us, to point toward a path of something that we don't know how to do well enough yet, or something that we just haven't learned how to be aware of enough yet. So that's the first thing, is to continue to just have this attitude of openness toward my own awareness, where I just want to learn more about what I'm really up to a lot of the time in my life, as opposed to my self-image and my ego that always wants to see myself in a positive light. The second part is a little more far afield, but it's what came up for me as you were talking. When you're talking about, if I'm making an amends to somebody, and then I notice I have these expectations in myself, or these demands of, well, you better make an amends back, or you should at least express appreciation to me, right? For my willingness to make amends to you. And again, if you're like me, all of those things will show up inside of me. I'll have a part of me that's hoping for that. I'll have a part of me that wants that. I'll have a part of me that, has that agenda. That's okay. All of that is okay. Like you said last week, Tom, ethics applies to our behavior, right? To our behavioral choices in our life, not to our experience in our life. So if I have those demands show up, I can just acknowledge them as they show up, unless I'm too invested in my image that I feel like I can't do that. If that's one of my rules, I can't do that, right? But the other piece that I wanted to add, if I have that kind of demand on somebody I'm making an amends with, what for a long time in my life I could not see, and I noticed so many of my clients struggle with seeing this. Whenever I'm connected with something that I really feel like I need, or really feel like I want in the moment, that's where my demanding nature really comes forward, right? That's where I have this really strong attachment or craving for something I want. That's where my self-centeredness can really coalesce, man, inside of me, and I can lose almost all awareness of the other person's perspective. But I want to make this point. In that moment where I'm making a demand of the other person to be a certain way, in that precise moment, I am not extending to that other person what I'm demanding they extend to me. And for a lot of us,
Can you say that again, Rock? You got to say that again.
in the very moment where I'm making a demand of another person, I am not extending to them what I'm demanding they extend to me. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, I'm saying to them at this moment, what I want and what I need is more important and matters more than whatever you need and whatever you want. And I expect the person to surrender what they want and make me the center of their focus and of themselves. And
That's not
as
how many minutes.
as I've come to understand that better, it's helped me find a voice when I experience someone is coming from that position toward me. It really helps me speak up for myself more, not necessarily in an adversarial way, but just to share what my experience is in that moment. It's like, gosh, you know, what I'm aware of is you're wanting me to make how you're feeling super important right now and what you want super important right now. But where is the room in that in this moment for me? Where is the room in that for what I want and what I'm feeling? Because I'm not experiencing any of that from you. And so becoming more aware of that dynamic when I begin to make demands of people has helped me, A, become more aware of when I start to make demands, but also more aware of when demands are being made of me and more able to say to the person, God, you know, this is my experience right now, and I'm not comfortable with that, or I don't like that. And I'm on the doing end of that a lot of the time, believe me, where I'm the demand maker, right? And I'm not conscious of it at all until it gets pointed out to me. Now, it might get pointed out a lot of different ways. Somebody getting ticked off with me, or somebody withdrawing from me, or somebody just talking with me, as I was demonstrating a minute ago, what their experience is in that moment. But that's the real negative to me about that demand posture is often when I'm in it, I'm deeply unaware of just how much I am excluding the other person from my awareness in that interaction. So those are a couple of points I wanted to add on. So thank you.
Very, very good points, Roger.
Yes.
You know, it's interesting, isn't it? Is we're going from it's all about me to a very different consciousness, right? Is that we're really, really poisoning that well. And now expanding our awareness that, hey, it's about me, but it's also about you. And just having, you know, a way Dr. Kempler used to say, making room enough for two. Making room for two. All right, Tom.
That's one of the things that my wife, I was quoting my wife, Dee, saying about marriage that I heard her say early on, and we were working with some other clients, but certainly see how she brought that to our marriage, which is the marriage has to be big enough for both people.
Yep.
And so often our cultural way is to just, you know, for us to decide which life are we going to live, you know, instead of, and by the way, I think yours and Jess's marriage is a wonderful example of that, by the way. And I could go on about that for a lot, but I think you guys are really poster children for how to pull that off and with something with that's not an easy thing to do at all. So I just want to say that. A couple of things about what Roger you're saying. First of all, I wrote down. I like this line. If you haven't written it before, you should write something about this. Learn more. I want to learn more about what I'm really up to. It's like, you know, it's such a humorously distrusting line of ourselves. You know,
Exactly.
I wonder what I'm really up to. You know, God, I'm sure I'm not the only one in this Zoom room right now that can go like, I know that I should hold on to some suspicion of myself.
Yeah.
Don't, trust is a good thing, but it's like, you don't want to be, I don't want to be a cynic.
Yeah, well, what's that line? Look at, I know you're messed up, but I'm just not sure about me.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing I want to say about Roger that I think, and this involves me. I don't know you that well. It's like I know Alan much better, but it's like, I'm willing to bet that my perception of you in this process, in this group, is similar to a lot of people. And you may have been the most demanding son of a bitch, blatant son of a bitch in the whole world. I don't know, because I know I sometimes surprise people when I tell people about kind of how I used to be. But I love the fact that you often talk about how you lapse into those demands.
Yeah.
Because when you're talking about that, what it makes me think about, because it's so, and this is just because it's difficult for me to see you at this time. Like I say, I'm totally aware that you may have been just like that, but when you're not talking about demanding in the way that the connotation that we often have about that somebody is coming in, slamming the doors and slamming their fist down. You're talking about it in a way that helps me, and I hope other people too understand that no, we can be in our that demanding place when we're being, even passive.
Oh, yeah.
So the word itself evokes all these connotations, but it's like, it's not that. It's
we can be in that mode when we're being super nice, Tom.
Oh,
we can be in that mode when we're being super polite. Right. I can be. I have been.
Oh, no.
I will
be.
As
a matter of fact, that's one of the things that I thought I really appreciate, Alan, it's like going through the steps with the emotional sobriety lens here is this feels like really high level training to me. It's like, and it's like, we're just, I'm pretty sure I'm not only not a Marine, I'm pretty sure I may be the opposite of Marines. It's like, but I feel like I get an opportunity to have a little bit of your Marine guidance in this sense of like, it's just as we get ready, we're moving now out of 8 into 9, and you're going like, okay, everybody just stop right there. We're going to check our equipment again. We're really going to be really thorough. And it's like, and this idea that more than ever before, going forward with what Roger's saying, that it's yes, this is about us, but it's about us in a whole different context, and it's a whole different expanded view of ourselves. It's our interpersonal world in meeting our interpersonal world, and we're learning to spin those plates. You were talking about the plates with earlier with Tom Potash coming in to help with the stuff, but I mean, working this stuff is a bit of a juggling act, and having us check ourselves in terms of our intent at this point, double check, triple check is so important, because when we talk about this goes to both of the things I was saying, what you said, Alan, and what I was saying about you, Roger. It really just brought home to me, you know how when you're sitting in these meetings, sometimes people just say something and all of a sudden you just go time tripping back and go like, oh yeah, that's what that was. And what it took me back to is how masterful I became long before recovery, of being the good guy, the nice guy. I even had a term for it back then, the emerging sensitive male. Who by the way, the mascot for that at that point was Alan Alda. It's like people who are younger may not know that. but it was, I was Alan Alda as much as I could be. And I manipulated the holy fuck out of people with that, especially women. It's like, it was horrible. Like when I look back at how I treated people, and part of what makes that successful is buying it myself. It's like being a good actor, really just being in character. So like I was a method actor or something, but I knew that I was doing it, or I wouldn't have even had the term emerging sensitive male when I talked about it. It's like so important to realize, this part. I mean, I just want to emphasize this part for my part today. Is just as we're moving from out of 8 into 9, be really cautious and pay close attention to what you're really up to. I'm going to punctuate with that. Amen. Thanks, guys.
Great stuff. Great stuff, you guys. Great stuff. A lot of wisdom in what was just said. Okay, so look, it's important for us to become aware of our demands and how we think that things have to be the way that we want them to be for us to be okay.
I hear a lot of people criticize the 12 steps that they're old-fashioned. I can understand that criticism. They were written back in 1935. Some people that are agnostic have difficulty with the word God used in the steps. For me, I look at the process that's involved, the forces that the 12 steps generate are so powerful that I think they're ageless. There's this interesting phenomena that happens when you work the steps. They create a charge and then a discharge. You know, the first step, we're powerless. Our life has become unmanageable. It creates this charge. You know, we're in big trouble and we don't know what to do. And then step 2 comes along and it says we have hope. That charge, that existential crisis that we have is resolved. What's happening here is parallel to life. We charge ourselves when we breathe in. When we exhale, we discharge. That's the rhythm of life. And the way I love to think about the 12 steps, it's helping us get connected to the rhythm of life so we can learn how to show up in a good way.